In this course, you will learn all about Next.js. I will show you all the main concepts of Next.js. It is the React framework for the web. It is used for creating front-end web applications. So in this video, I'll give you a run through Next.js. So first, let's start by creating the next app. You can see you can create a next app using this command. I can copy this. You can go to this site and let's go to my VS Code. I have already started my VS Code, so I can click on this and it will start the terminal. Let's wait a little bit. Now I can paste the command here and I can create a file. Make sure to place a dot here, or if you don't place a dot here, it will create another folder inside our current folder, but I don't want to create another folder, so I'll create this dot. So I'll press tab and it will create the file. Let's wait a little bit. Now after some time it will take us to this question: would you like to use TypeScript? So in my case I can say yes. If you don't want to use TypeScript, you can set it to none, but now in my case I will set it to yes. And the answer is, it will ask us to ESLint, and I will say yes again. Now I can also type yes because I want to install Tailwind CSS, and the other is it will ask us to use source directory. In my case I don't use source directory, so I will say no. If you want to use source directory, you can say yes and it will install source directory and it will put all the folders inside source directory. In some cases it is useful for organizing your folder, but in my case I don't want to use source directory. And the other is, it will ask us to use app router. In my case I'm gonna use app router and I will say yes. And would you like to use the customize import aliases? I will say no. This is used for if you want to access the root folders, it will use @. If you want to use another signs, like if you change the @ to end, you can use yes and you can customize it, but in my case I don't want to customize it and I will say no. And it will install all the packages. You can see it will install all the node modules, and after installing I will be back. Now I have installed all the packages. You can see I have installed the node modules, and it has installed all the app directory and all the public. Let us give you a rundown of these files. You can see I have a Tailwind and readme and all other files. Most of the time we don't use most of these. Let's see what we use. We use the app directory, the public. Sometimes the public is used to store our images and we can access it directly with the slash sign, and we can use app directory to create pages. Every folder will be used as a URL, and inside it we'll create a page folder to access the page of the folder. And you can see you can configure also the Tailwind CSS. So this is the basic rundown of the directories. Now let's see how to navigate between pages. Now let's see how we can navigate between pages. I have already continued from the last video. You can see now I can run npm run build, npm run dev not build, and it will start my development server. You can see now it will come. Now I can click this and it will give me the development server. Let's go here, and you can see it will render this page. Let's wait a little bit. Now it will render this page. When I go to this page, you can see it will give me this. Now I can delete this. And let's render hello h1 hello and save it, and go to this page. You can see it will give me this. Now let's go to global css and let's delete all the styling, delete that and save it, and go to again, and you can see it will give me hello. Now let's see how we can navigate between pages. Now in the app folder I can create any folder with any name what I want. Let's create a folder and let's give it profile, and if I create a page inside this profile, it will be rendered as localhost and localhost 3000 and profile. Let's show you. Now I can go to profile and let's create a new file and let's give it page.tsx, and let's give it a function array, not array, see, export default function, and let's give it profile, and let's render return let's return div this is profile page, and let's save this, and let's come here and let's come here and let's render profile. Let's say this profile, and let's go here. You can see it will render the profile page. You can see if I create multiple folders and if I set a page.tsx inside them, it will render their pages with their respective names. You can see now if I have ID, I can access the ID using use params. Now let's create ID inside this profile. Now we can see inside this profile I can create new folder, and inside this I can say any name. If I want to access dynamic data, I can give an ID inside this. Now this is dynamic data which is determined by the user's URL. So inside this ID let's create a new page.tsx. So again let's export default and function, and let's say it profile ID, profile ID, and let's render the again return div this is profile ID, and let's save this. Now let's come here. You can see I have already created the profile ID. Now this profile ID will be rendered when we change the ID. When we give any number or any sign, it will render this page. Let's show you. Now you can see this is the profile page. Now I can give anything in the profile. So now I can give any random number and it will render profile ID, and again I can give 1 2 3. You can see it will render profile ID whenever I change this number or this ID. So if I want to access this ID first, I need to import the use params, which is used to parse the ID of the URL. So I can give const params equals use params. We need to import use params from next navigation. You can see now in order to use params, you need to convert this page into a client component. By default, every component is, if you don't use any client component, or if you don't give it a use client notation, it will be rendered as a use server. And the problem is, if you use params inside a server component, it will throw an error. Let's show you. And if I say, you can see it will give us some error because use params is a client property. We can't use it inside a server component. So I can enter this and let's give it a use client and save it. You can see now it will give me this page. Now this params is the params of the page. So now I can parse it through params and I can render it through params.id. You can see params.id. If I save this and save it, and let's go here and let's give it this, you can see now it will render the params from this page. Now you can see this is how we parse params and how we navigate through the pages. Now the next is, if I want to navigate between pages, I should use router. So I can use router. So const, let's give router equals use router from next navigation, and make sure to import it. You can see I can navigate with this router. Let's cut this first and let's give a bracket and let's paste this and let's give a button and let's say it go to home. And in order to navigate, we can give on click event, on click, and you can use both brackets and you can use also a quotation mark. In my case I use quotation mark, and let's give slash. It is giving me some error. Yeah, I can't use a quotation mark. I can use this, and I can give a function, and inside this function let's give router dot push, and let's give this, and let's render this. Now when I click this go to home, it will take me to the home page, which is page.tsx, which is hello. So now you can see if I click this, it will take me home, and I can also create use router. You can see we cannot use router inside a server component. By default this is a server component. If I use this, it will give me an error. So let's show you this. Const router equals use router from next navigation, and let's render this. Now it will give me an error. You can see use router, you cannot use router inside this page. So we need to convert this into use client and render this. Now it will give me hello, and now if I want to navigate to the page, as I have shown you, you can control X this, and let's give it a button. Let's give it a button. I think let's say first hi there, and let's give it 3 buttons. Button go to ID, 1, and let's click this and on click, and let's give a function, and let's give router dot push, and let's give profile slash 1. You can see it will take me to now if I click this, you can see it will take me to profile 1, and if I click this it will take me home. You can also create multiple buttons. Let's create multiple buttons, and let's give this 2, and let's give this to 3, and 2, and 3. Now let's save this. Now if I click this, it will take me to profile 1. If I click this it will take me 2, and if I click this it will take me 3. So now you can see we can navigate between using the router to push. I can, in the later section, I can also show you the link element. It is a little bit advanced concept. There is a little bit advanced concept in that. So the basic navigation, you can use router.push to navigate between pages. Now let's go to the next section. Now let's use the link to navigate between pages. So far we have seen router.push to move between pages. We need to set it to use client in order to use router. Now let's see the link element. Both are used to route between pages, but they have a little difference. Let's see that. First, let's go to this page, this ID page, and let's see the link. Let's import it from next link. Unlike the router, the link element, you can use it inside the server component. I will show you that. So let's see, go to home, and let's go here, and let's say href, and let's say home. Now let's delete this use client, and let's delete this also. Let's delete this. Let's comment this out. Let's render h1. Hi, and let's save this. Now let's go to router slash profile slash 1 or 1233. You can see it will not give me any error even though I render this inside the server. So you can use the link element without using use client. Even in the server you can use the link element, and also you can navigate between any pages using a link element. If you want to navigate between the server to server elements, you can use link. Unlike the router, you can use link inside the server component. Also in the link we have more advanced features, like you can use curly brackets, and you can set path name, and let's set it to home, and I can use it like this, and I can navigate to home. You can see it will navigate to home. And the other advantage is using the link element, it will not reset any local state of the application. It will preserve all the state, and also it has more advanced features. Like if you navigate to another page, by default it will scroll to the top, but you can set scroll equals false. Now if we scroll to another page, it will not scroll to the top. Instead, it will preserve all the scroll position. And also we can give also query elements. You can use query, and let's give an object, and let's give user, and let's give either name of Zach, and let's save this. You can see now if I click this link, it will not scroll, and it will go to home, and it will give me this query element. Let's see that. Now if I click this, you can see it will give me this element. So if you want to more advanced link element, routing elements, and if you don't want to receive the state of your element, you should use link element. Also it has a prefetch element. So if I say prefetch, by default it is prefetch to true. Prefetch equals, by default it is to true, which means when I navigate to the element, it will fetch the element before it's loading. But if I set it to prefetch to false, it will prefetch on the background, I think. So that is using the link element to navigate between the pages. It has more advanced features like this. You can see you can also use router.push to achieve these elements, but the link element is more simpler and it has more advanced features. So I recommend you use link if you can. If you can't use link elements, use router.push. So let's go to the next section. Now the other is we can also use reusable you can also create reusable contents inside the root folder. So now let's delete this all. Let's save this now, and let's delete this, and let's create a component folder. Components folder. Now these components are reusable components inside our app function. Now we can create with any name. So let's create now let's say header.tsx, and let's create a function, export default function header, and let's give return div, not div. Let's give this, and let's give div. This is header component. You can see I've created this header component. Now I can access it with @, because this is at root folder. So in the app file, I can go to the page file, and let's come here, and let's say header. You can see I can access it from the header component, and let's close this, and let's save this, and let's come here. You can see I can access it here. Now you can use the components folder to create reusable components. Let's create another file. You can see I can create also a footer component. Let's give the name with capital letter, footer.tsx, and let's give export default function footer, and let's return and let's give a div, and let's give a footer. Now I can also access this component inside any of the pages. If I want to access it in the profile, I can do so. Let's access this. Let's delete this first, and let's give let's give a footer element for this. Now if I come here and let's give a footer, you can see I can access the footer element inside this using the @ symbol, because it is in the core file. It is found on the core file. If the component folder is in the core file, you can use @ sign to access it. So in this case it is found on the core folder of our file, so we can access it with @ sign. So let's give this and let's save this. And if I go to the profile, let's delete this and let's give a profile. You can see I can access it, our component or reusable component. So you can create any reusable components in the component folder at the core part of your file, and you can access them through the @ symbol, and you can create any reusable component in your Next.js app. Let's go to the next section. Now the other is if you want to use some components or some texts or some components, some elements reusable inside another pages, we use layout tsx. At this point we have created the layout on the root of our app folder, so this layout is shared across all applications. So if I create a div element inside this div and let's create this is shared component, let's say component, and save this. Now this div element will be shared all across the elements inside the profile and inside the ID. Let's see that. You can see it is shared across the home page, and if I go to the profile page, let's go to profile page, you can see I can render the shared element. If I go to also the ID page, let's say this, you can see also it is shared across all elements. So you can also use inside the profile. Now inside the profile, if I create another layout page, let's create this and let's say layout.tsx. Now let's create export default function. Let's say this layout and return. Make sure to include the children. Let's see this layout first. You can see it has a children, and let's copy this first. Let's copy this, Ctrl C, and let's come here and let's paste this, and inside return let's come here again. You can see there is a children inside this. We can render a children. Let's create this and let's give children, and inside the children let's Ctrl Z. Inside the children let's give a div. This is profile shared, and let's save this. Now this profile shared will be shared across the ID and the profile. Let's see that it will not be shared here. If I go to profile, you can see this is profile shared. If I go to the ID page, you can see it is profile shared. So we have created this inside the profile page, it will not share, it will share across the id or the children of the profile, and it will not be shared outside of the profile. So the layout is used to create some elements which is shared across its children element and its element. So they are useful for creating reusable shared elements across the children element. So this is how you use the layout in Next.js. So let's go to the next section. Now let's see how we use the image component inside our elements. So the image component we can use instead of the image component. Let's show you. I can use image element, but this element is not optimized for the web and it will not optimize your image. Instead, we can use the image component. I think this is the previous one. You can use this, but it's not the optimized version of the image component. So we will use the image component inside the Next.js, our Next.js app. So we can use like this image, and we can use it like this. I think we need to, yeah, after we use this we can add a source, and I have already created a chat element dot chat dot jpg, and it will warn me. Let's import this image. I think it's next image, yeah. And we need to specify the alt element. Alt equals this is chat image, and save it. Now it will give us an error, I think, because we didn't specify any width and height. Yeah, you can see we must specify a width and a height for the image. Let's specify a width of 100 and save it. Again, it will give us also another error. I think it will need to specify a height. So let's go here and let's specify a height of 100, and let's save it. Now it will render the image. Let's wait a little bit. You can see you can change the width and the height like this, and you can also decrease the width and the height. Let's give it 50. I think it will stretch the image. You can see it will give us like this, and I think it will preserve its aspect ratio. Let's give it 50. Yeah, you can see it will preserve its aspect ratio. But if we don't want to use the width and height, and let's say if the width and height depend on the parent component, you can use fill. Let's show you. Now I can create at the bottom, and now let's give this first 100 and 100 again, and save it. Now let's go here. You can see it will give us this. Now the other is we can use the image, the width and the height from the parent element. Now let's give a div element. Inside the div element, let's create an image tag, and let's give a source. That's that. A source of /chat.jpg, and let's give alt equals this is the shot image, and let's give. Now it will give us an error when we render this, but we can use a fill element, and inside this fill element we can specify the class name, and inside this class name we can specify width of 10, or we can specify size of 10, which is width of 10 and height of 10. And if I save this and go to my browser, you can see it will give us the image, but it will give us on the whole screen. To prevent this, we need to give this relative, and inside the image element we can give a class name, and we can give it absolute. Now this image element will only affected by this div element because we have given this relative and we have given this absolute. Now it will give us the size of width of 10 and height of 10. You can see width of 10, which is 4 pixel, and height of 10. And if we see this, you can see it will give us this element. So now if you want to use with the parent size, you can use fill, and you can use the size inside the parent element, or you can specify the width and height directly inside the image element. So this is how you use the image element inside Next.js. So let's go to the next section. Now let's see how we can use the API folder inside our Next.js project. You can create route handlers inside your Next app directly without creating any backend element. So let's show you that. In the app folder you can create an API folder, you can see. So this API folder you can create any endpoint which you can interact with your frontend, and you can fetch data inside your backend element. So inside the API folder we need to specify any with the name of route.ts. Let's show you that. I can create this, and I can create route.ts file. So this route.ts file we can use to interact with as a backend. So let's create that. Let's create export async and function, and we need to specify the endpoint which we can interact or we can fetch to. So in my case it is a get, but you can also use a post, a patch, all works fine. So now in this case we can use a get function, and let's specify this, and let's return next response dot json hello there, and save it. You can see now when we use this route handler, like in the pages folder, when we navigate to localhost API and localhost 3000 and API, it will give us this endpoint. Let's show you that. I can open my Postman, and let's check that. In this case we don't need WebSocket, we need HTTP, and we need get. We have already specified a get endpoint, and let's specify this localhost 3000 API and 1, and let's send this. Yeah, it is giving me an error. Let's give HTTP, and let's check this. there is some error. Let's check that. Yeah, I fixed that. It is not API 1, it is API. So let's send this. You can see it will give us hi there. So we can interact as a backend for this. And now let's create another endpoints. Now we can access this route using localhost 3000 and API 1. Let's create another route. Let's create with an ID. So we have API and we can create another folder, and inside this folder we can specify an ID, and inside this you can create another route.ts. Let's specify another get endpoint, export async function and get let's specify params. If we use ID, we need to specify the params, and we can get the ID from the params. So params, and let's give this params, and let's give this ID. I think this like this ID string, and let's specify first let's console log the params, console log params.id, and return next response.json, and let's specify this, and let's render ID and params.id, and let's save this. Now we have specified this when we send request to this endpoint, which is params localhost 3000 API and an ID, any ID, it will return the ID number. Let's check that. It is a get request, and let's specify 34, and let's send this request. Let's check that. Oh, it is giving us an error. Let's see the error. Maybe I think we need to specify the request here first. I think that maybe the error. I will show you the error. I think cannot read the property of ID. Let's see the error. Yeah, you can see we need to specify first the request, and we need to specify the params. I think this is the problem. So let's specify the request first. In the first parameter we need to specify request, and let's show you that request, and it is request. And let's say the comma, and let's save this. Now I think it will work. Let's check that. Let's send this. You can see it will give us ID of 34. If I specify any number, let's say 456, it will parse all the ID, and it will give me the ID. You can see, make sure you specify the request first, and make sure you specify the params. So you can use like this. You can see it from the documentation. We must specify the request. If you don't specify the request, it will give us an error. So this is how you use route handler. You can see it is simpler, and you can see you can use it as a backend, as a lightweight backend to your application and you can fetch any data from it. You can use it for the webhook on different purposes. So this is how you use API in Next.js. Now let's move on to the next section. Now let's create a font inside Next.js. First, we need to go to google.font. Google fonts, I think. So now you can see there is a lot of fonts in here. So in our Next.js app, we can use fonts directly inside the layout. You can see it is giving us next.fonts.google. There is some elements inside this. We can directly import this the fonts inside this inter class name, and we can use directly this, but some fonts may be not found inside this next font Google. So and it will apply to all elements. So I think it's not a good option to use it like this. If you want to change the fonts inside your Next.js app, we can go to globals and we can come here and we can select any fonts you want. Let's say I can select this. Now it will give us this font, and we can go to this get font element, and we can go to get embed element. Let's go here. I think it is not giving. Let's use the import element. Now you can copy this import element and copy this and come here, and you can paste here. Now we can use this font and let's come here, and you can see it will give us font variation elements. Now let's copy this. I think I don't want the font element, I want only this, and let's copy this and let's create an element at layer element and the component inside your tailwind file, and let's give dot style and let's paste that, and let's change this to I think 300. Now you can use this style inside any element inside your Next.js app. So inside this page you can see we have this. If I change this, now you can see it is this font. Let's come here, and you can see it is like this there. I think it has by default applied that. Yeah, let's go here and let's give a class name and let's paste style and let's save this. You can see it has applied that, and if I come here again and in global CSS, I think let's save it. Oh, it will give me that. Let's give a font weight of 900. You can see it will give this, but it will also apply another element. To change that, we need to give a class name to each element, and we need to disable the style that is affected by this. For now it will give this element a button element, but you can omit the button element styles by using style none. I will not do that now, but you can do that. So you can use directly any Google fonts or any other fonts inside with the import element, and you can apply any style name, and you can give the style this font family and font weight like this, and you can apply directly inside your page like this, and it will apply the styles like this. If I change this to 100. You can see it will change this to 100. So this is how you apply fonts in Next.js. So let's go to the next line. Now let's see how we can use middlewares inside our Next.js app. First, you need to create only one middleware inside your app. You can catch any pages and you can redirect to any page you want by using the middleware before it is requested or it is go to the client. So let's create a middleware. First, let's close all this. Let's close all this and let's create a new folder, not folder, any file. Let's create any file which is called middleware.ts. Middleware.ts. Now it is used to intercept our requests, so we can do anything else like authentication and analytics inside this middleware. So let's show you an example. First, we need to create a function, export function, and let's give it middleware. The name must be middleware, and inside the parameter let's give it request, and it is request. It is a type of request. Yeah, request, and let's give this a bracket. Now we can intercept any requests we want. We can protect any pages using this middleware. Let's show you that. First, let's create a constant by creating const is logged in equals false, and let's give this if is logged in. Now if this is false, we need to redirect to the home page. Let's show you that. If this is true, return next response from next server dot next. If it is true, we'll let the request flow and we do nothing. But if it is false, we'll redirect the page to the home page or some elements, or we can do any other things like console log this user is not authenticated, sort of like that. So in my case, let's show you return return next response dot redirect new URL and home. It will redirect us to home, and request dot URL. So now when we apply this, it will, by default it is false. Now when we go to any page, it will redirect us to the home page. Let's show you that. Now let's come here and first let's refresh it. You can see it will apply also on the home page. The middleware apply also on the home page, and if we try to access the home page, it will give us this error. But we can specify that. Let's go to this. The best will be we using a matcher. We can also use request.url inside this using end. This end. you can specify the URL, and if the URL is homepage, you can render the homepage, but it is not the recommended way. The recommended way is using a catcher or a matcher, not a catcher. So we can use export const config equals matcher like this, and we can specify the paths that we can redirect to, so we can protect. So it is export. So now let's specify the paths. Let's example, let's protect a profile, and let's save this. Now if we navigate to the profile page, it will redirect us to the home page, but it will not protect the home page. If we go to the home page, it is public and anyone can access it. Let's show you, and let's refresh. Now you can see the home page is not protected and we can access it. But if I go to the profile page, you can see it will direct me back to the home page because the profile page is protected, and in my case it is, I am not logged in or I am not authenticated user. So if I try to access the profile page, because I am not a protected authenticated user, it will redirect me to homepage. You can use this to authenticate users. Now if you want to protect multiple pages, you can use like this, like an array. And if you want to protect pages which is inside the children of the profile page, you can use like this, slash profile and slash path and star. I think it's like this. Now it will protect profile page, and it will protect any page which is found after the profile page. It will be protected, and let's save it and let's show you. Now if I try to access the profile page, it will redirect me back to the home page. But if I try to access profile slash any number, which is our ID, also it is also protected. But if I delete this, it will only protect the profile page. Let's show you now. If I go to profile slash one this ID, it will not protect it. It will go to that page because it is not protected. Only the profile page is protected. So this is a good way to show analytics or protection or authenticate users using, you can use middleware to authenticate users. If I say this to true, now because it is true, all the requests will not be protected because the user is authenticated. Now if I go to profile, I can access the profile page. Let's show you. If I go to profile, you can see I can access the profile. Now if I create new endpoint and let's say profile, I can access profile slash any path which is found inside profile. Now it's not also you can access that also. Now if I go to this, you can see I can access that because I am authenticated. So you can check any authentication inside the middleware. This is how you use a middleware. It is a good way to authenticate users and to give analytics to users. So this is how you use authentication middlewares inside Next.js. Now let's see how we can configure our SEO in our Next.js app. By default, all pages will be rendered with this metadata, which is create next tab and generate create next tab. You can see now if I go here, you can see the title will be create next tab, and the description we can use inspect and we can see the head element. Inside the head element we can see the description. Where is it? It is the title. Let's see the description generated by create next step. You can see this is the description. The description by default to all pages will be, if I go to profile page, the description also generated by next step, and the title will be create next step. But we can configure this. Now we can specify metadata to each element. Make sure the metadata is specified in the server component. If you render metadata inside the client element, it will throw an error. Let's show you that. Now I am on home page. Now let's create metadata this home page. Now if I come here and let's create metadata to this, export const metadata, I think it's like this, metadata, and let's import metadata from next, equals title. This is the home page, and let's create a description. This is the description of the home page. Now if I save this, it will give me an error because I am using use client inside I'm using the metadata inside use client element. In order to save this, let's delete this first. Let's change this to, it will give us this error. For now, let's change this to link elements. I can change this to maybe I can delete this. I don't need that. You can use link element, link from next link. Instead of use router, go to id1, which is href profile /profile /id/1. I can use it like this. Now I can use server components. Now I can delete this. Now it is server component, and I can delete this, and let's save this, and let's see the result. Now I can go to the home page. You can see now it will not give me any error, and you can see the title. This is the home page, and this is the description of the home page. If I go to the profile page, it will apply the layout or the default page, create next step, and generated by next step. We can specify also in this area. In this part we can go to the profile page. So this is the profile page. Inside this profile page we can specify a metadata also. Export const metadata, I think data. Let's import this, equals title. This is the profile page, and the description. This is the description of profile page. Now we can specify like this, and also there are other options like we can create open graph. Inside this we can create, let's say, a URL. We can specify a URL of your website or a URL of to this page. So let's say localhost. You can specify a URL. The other is I don't know, it is giving me some error. Yeah, it is giving me some error. I think I'm wrong. Yeah, it is open graph. It is inside open graph. This open graph is used when you share this your Next.js app to a social media or another page. It will show a URL, a name, and a title like this. So you can specify the structure of that. So you can specify an object like this, and you can specify title, and this is profile again. This is profile, and description. This is description. You can specify the URL of this page, URL, and for now let's say localhost, and you can specify also sitemap, also localhost. Let's say this localhost, and also the other is you can specify the images. The images which is shown on the social media page. You can also use an array, and you can render multiple pages using an object. You can specify a URL of the image, let's say localhost, and the width let's say 100, and also the height 100 also. So now you can see we can have many different options to render a page. When we render a page, you have many options to be crawled by the crawler of Google, and which you can use open graph to share your links, and it will show this profile page, this description. You can specify any name to your page, and it will show on the social media link, and it will be crawled by social media link. The other is we can use generate metadata if you want to use dynamic data. So let's show you that inside this ID, not this ID. Inside this ID, the ID is dynamic element. So in order to use this dynamic element, maybe first we need to fetch the ID of the element, and after that we need to render the ID of the element. For this now, let's create this ID. Let's show you that. First, we have specified in the API route, we have created this API route which returns this elements, and now in order to create a dynamic route, first I go to this ID of my API, so I can give a description. Let's give a description, and let's say this is the ID of the description, and let's say this. You can see this is the description, this is the ID. Now if I go to my ID route, I can fetch this ID, and I can generate the metadata dynamically using this ID. So in order to do that, we need to first create a fetch function. So inside this post element, inside this ID page, we can create a sync function, function fetch post and post id. Let's give a post id and let's give any let's give a const post equals await fetch. Let's give backticks http localhost 3000 /API / post id. We can utilize this, and we can use method, not method name, method get. Now you can use like this to fetch the data, and we can return the post.json return post.json like this. Now we can generate the metadata inside using this property. So we can create another function which is export async function and generate metadata. I think it is like this, and inside this we can part the params like this, params, and let's give any, and let's give the function const post equals await fetch post and params dot id. Now we can fetch using this fetch post. You can call the function, and we can pass this params. This params is parsed from this id element. Now after this we can fetch the post, and after fetching the post we can return the object, and inside this object you can say title post.id and description post.description. We can use it like this, and when we use like this, and let's go to profile dot slash this, you can see now it will give me this, and if I go to the description, this is the ID of the description. It works fine. Also we can specify the other elements which is found, which I have shown you before. We can specify open graph in this also, open graph, and we can specify an object, and you can specify the title, and let's give post.id. You can use it like this. We can pass dynamic data inside the open graph. For now, let's give the title of this is the title page, title of the ID, and let's give a description. This is the description. Also you can use post.description. I can use like this. You can also use post.description inside this like this. Let's use this that also, post.id like this, and you can use post.description. You can also fetch it like this, and you can specify the URL, and you can specify the URL of your open graph. Let's say localhost, but you can specify the URL when we share it to the social media, it will show the URL to this. Make sure to specify your real URL and the sitemap, and let's give localhost again. You get the point. So you can use like this inside using generate metadata, which is used dynamically. Unlike the normal metadata, this generate metadata is used to fetch dynamically the content, dynamic name of the content. So you can also specify the images like I shown you before, and let's give an array, and you can render multiple images inside this URL localhost, and you can specify the width, and let's give 100, and the height of 100. You can create multiple images. So you can use generate metadata to generate dynamic data, which is fetched from the backend like this, and you can use metadata to fetch data that is not dynamic. So this is how you use SEO in Next.js. Let's go to the next section. Okay, let's see now how we can access parameters and search params inside the client component and in the server component. So here I have in my app folder, I can create a client folder, and inside this let's create an ID. Let's create this, and let's say this not page. Let's create a folder, and let's set it to ID, and inside this ID let's create a page.tsx. Now let's create our function export default function. Let's say client ID, and let's give return. Let's give this, and let's give a div of client ID, and let's give the ID. But now let's leave it here, and let's create another ID, which is div client search params or search ID. Now in order to access the ID, first let's save this. It is running now. After saving this, in order to access the ID and the search ID inside the client component, you can use params and use search params. But if I use this as a server component, it will give me an error. Let's show you that. Now let's show you const params equals use params, and again const search params. Search params equals use search params, and let's save this. And now I can access params.id directly here, params.id, which is the ID of this, which you can get from the URL of the page. And also I can access the search params, but not like params.id. Instead, we can use a function like this, search params, dot get, and we can specify the search name of the search URL. So in this case, let's give it a new or you can type anything you want, and it will parse all the elements. But now if I go to the client component, let's go here and let's show you. If I come here and go to client slash let's say this one, it will throw an error because it is a client component, it is a server component, but we are using use params, and you can see use params and use search params are all used inside a client component. So we can turn this into use client and save this. Now the error will go away, and it will render our params. You can see our params is 1, which is this. If I change this to 2, you can see it will render the params. Also, if you want to render the search params, you can leave question mark and set it to new and equals let's say this new car, and let's render this. You can see it will render the new element. Let's say this. You can see it will render that. But how do we access the search param from the server component? That's what we see in the next. Now you can see we can use params and use search params inside a client component. But if I want to access the params and search params inside a server component, I need to pass like this: params and search params. Now if I use like this, it will render the params and search params inside the server component without any error. So let's show you by creating a server component. Let's create a folder, not in this area. Let's close this first. Now inside our app, let's create a folder and let's save it to server. So inside this server, let's create another folder and let's save this to id. Inside this id, let's add page.tsx. Now we can export the default function server, and we can access the params and search param directly inside the parameter without using use params and use search params. So let's say params and search params. Make sure the spelling is correct. If the spelling is not correct, it will not retrieve the search param and params correctly. So make sure the spelling is correct, and let's say this to any, and let's give a function and return. Let's give this and let's give div and client id is params.id, and if I come here and again I can add a div, another div, and let's say client search id, which is in this case we can use search params dot new, or anything that you specify inside the URL you can specify it here. If I specify this as get, I can specify in the URL and get, and it will give me the element which is rendered inside the get. So in this case I need to render the new, and let's show you. Let's go to the browser and let's go here and let's change this to server and slash, let's say this. You can see the client id, it has parsed the element on the server component, this element, and let's show you how to parse the search params. And let's say new equals this you can see it will parse the element, but if I give this different name, it will not render that. Let's say n, and you can see it will not render that because I am saying this new. So the name must be the name must match inside this and inside the code. So this is how you get the search params using the search params and params inside the client component and the server component. Let's move on to the next section. Now let's show you how to fetch data inside the server component and inside the client component. Both use different approaches to fetch data. Inside the server component, we use async await and with server actions. Inside the client component, we use effect and use state. Let's show you how to fetch data inside the server component. So first, I need to create. Let's delete this. Let's close this, and let's create a new file which is page.tsx, and inside this page.tsx let's create a function which is export default async, and the function, let's say this server, let's say this server, and let's render this and return let's return this, and let's say link, no, let's give nothing, h1 hi there, and let's duplicate this and let's save this for now. Now we need to fetch the data. So inside this is the server component. If I use client, it will throw in an error because we cannot use async component inside the client component. We can only use async components inside a server component. I will show you why I use async inside this component. This is used to fetch data inside the fetch function. Now I can create the fetch function. Now async function fetch data this is the fetch function which we can use to fetch data from the external server or our API folder. So we can use async function inside this. Before this we use API folder, but now in the newer version we can use async function inside directly our server components. So now let's create try catch error and console.log error. In the try file I will use icanas.jokes API to fetch all the data. So let's create const response equals await fetch https, I think it's like this, https / icon has dot joke.com / we need to fetch the header. If we fetch this directly, it is a website, not an API, so we need to parse only the header. So I can create a bracket, and inside this bracket I can specify headers, and inside these headers I can accept application.json, and below this I can return response.json, and let's save this. Now you can see I am fetching the data from this website, and I am parsing its application not.json/json. Now it will parse the application JSON, and it will give me the joke. Now I can render in here. Let's delay this, and let's render. First we need to call this function. This function, if this function is not called, it will not execute, so we need to call it. So let's give const data equals, we need to call the function await. We need to await the function await fetch data, and after calling this function, now we can render the data. So the data will be, we'll have let's show you with the postman. Now let's show you with postman first. Now I can create a new endpoint, and let's come here and let's copy this, Control C, and let's paste it here, and inside the header I can specify accept, and let's specify application/json, and let's get this. You can see the data will have ID, joke, and status. So we need the joke, and let's go here, and I have already called the function. Now to render the data, we need to opt into the object, and we need to choose between the three. I need to render this joke. If we render the data as a whole, it will give us an error because you cannot render the object directly inside the template. So we need to render the joke. Let's render the joke, and let's give a div, and inside this div we need to create data.joke, and let's save this, and when we go to the server component, it will render that. Let's go here, and let's delay this, and let's go here. You can see it will render the server component. It will render this, but you can see if I refresh this, the joke will not be refreshed. But in this case, if I send again, you can see it give us different jokes, but in Next.js case, it will give the same joke because it has cached our request. So in order to revalidate this cache, we need to give another element, which is next revalidate, and let's give a 5 second. Now every 5 seconds it will revalidate the cache. Now if I go to here, and if I refresh, you can see after 5 seconds it will refresh our jokes. But if I don't want to revalidate every 5 seconds, if I want to catch, if I don't want any catch, we can delay this and give catch, and let's say no store. We can give no catch or no store, and if I say like this, and if I refresh, every time I refresh, it will give me a new post. You can see it will give me a new post. So now this is how you fetch data inside the server component. But if I change this to use client, let's show you. If I change this to use client and save this, it will give me an error because we cannot use async await function inside the client component. If I come here and if I refresh this, I think it works fine, but it is not good practice to use like this. Let's save this. Yeah, I don't save it before. Now if I save it, it will throw an error. Let's see this. Yeah, it will work fine, but you must use you can see it will give me some error. prevent client component from async function. You can see it will give me some error inside the function. So in order to change this, we don't need use client inside async components. So in order to fetch inside the client component, let's go to this client component and let's create a new page.tsx. And in order to fetch data, we can use effect like in React. So let's show you that. So let's create the function export default, and the function, let's say client, and let's return again div hi there, and let's duplicate this and let's save this. Now in order to fetch the data, we need to use state and use effect. So now let's define our use state const data set data equals use state. I need to import it from React. Use state, let's give this an object of joke, and it will be string, and initially it will have joke of empty, and let's save this and let's create a function again which fetches our data. So we can fetch data equals async. This is not async component, this is async function which we can call inside use effect. So we can use async component. So we can use like this, and we can render async try and catch error console.log error, and save this and go to try catch, and let's render this const response equals await fetch. Let's copy this inside the server. Let's copy this command, and let's come here and let's delete this and paste it here, and let's comma this and headers again. We can accept application /json. I think it is giving us an error. Fetch, yeah, it must be inside bracket, I think, like this. Yeah, so now we can fetch like this, and again const data equals await response.json, and let's set the data to data, and let's save this. And now we can call use effect outside of our fetch function. We can come here and let's call use effect from React, and let's come here and let's call the fetch data function fetch data, and we can call it when the page or when the component initialized. If I use like empty array, it will say like only render this use effect when this component initialized. But if I don't use like this, it will render every time, it will run every time when something changes inside this component. But in this case, we can use when the component renders. So inside this, we can use inside the data, we can use data div, which is data dot joke, and save this. Now if I go to the client component, now I am in the server component. If I go to the client component, not the client this way with id, inside the client component, yeah, so it will give me an error because I'm trying to render this effect inside the server component. It's if I don't specify this client, it will count it as a server component. So I need to go here and let's specify use client and save this. Now it will give me the component. Let's wait here. You can see it will give me the component. But now if I refresh this, every time when I refresh this, it will give me a new fetched data. We cannot cache like this inside, like inside the server component. We must use React query or other libraries to cache the data. So in this case, you cannot cache the data directly. So you can see you have fetched inside the client component and inside the server component. So this is how you fetch data inside the client and the server component. Let's move on to the next section. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a toast inside Next.js. So there are many libraries you can achieve this. Let's show you. First, we have React Toast. You can use React Toast to create toast elements. It is so easy and it is so good, and it has many weekly dollars. You can use this. The second choice is you can use Flowbyte toast element. You can see you can create your own toast element using this code, and you can copy paste this code as a component, and you can use this component inside your Next.js app. But my favorite is this library, this Sooner library. It is easier to use and it is effective, so cool. So let's show you this. I will not use Flowbyte and Toastify. For now, I'll use Sooner. This library is so light and so cool to use, and it is also easy to use. So first we need to install this, and let's come here and let's paste this, and it will install the package. And after this, we need to share this toaster element inside our layout so that it will be shared across all the components. So we will go to the layout and we'll share the element. First, let's install this. Now you can see it has successfully installed that. Now if I go to layout and I can share the element inside this layout element, and let's create toaster from Sooner. You can see, and now this component will be shared all across the application. You can see from this. Now if I go to client, let's create our toast element. If I go to client element, let's delete this first, and let's create a button. I think it is like this. Yeah, let's create a button, and let's create give me a toast, and let's create on click. Let's create a function which will be toast. I think it is like this. My first toast. We need to import this toast element. I don't know why it's not coming, but let's import it manually. Import toast from Sonar. Now it will work fine. You can see now if I go to client component, let's go here, let's come here. Now if I click this, you can see it will give me my first toast. You can see the effect also, it is also cool. You can see when I hover it, it will give me this effect. If I click this, you can see it will give me this cool hover effect. You can also modify some elements inside the toast element. Let's go to here, and inside this toast element I can change some elements. First, if I want to make this expand, let's show you. If I click this, you can see it will be overwrite one another. But if I create expand and save this and come here, now if I click give me toast, you can see it will be expanded toasts. The next is if I want rich color, I can specify rich colors, and if I create this, it will not give me. But if I come here in the client and let's create dot success and save it, let's come here. If you can see it will give me rich color. If I say error and save it, and you can see it will give me an error message. You can see that, and also we can also change the position of the toast. In my case it is bottom left, I think, bottom right, I think, but we can change the position also. Position, let's say top right, and save it and come here. Now if I give me toast, you can see it will give me this toast element above the top right. Let's say top left, you can also add top left and save it and give me toast. You can see it will give us these toast elements. For now, let's give it top right and save it, and you can see it will give us these top right toast elements. So this is how you use the toast element inside Next.js. Let's go to the next section. Use the context API inside our Next.js app. So let's close this first and let's create a context folder. And inside this context folder, I can create any tsx file. For now, let's create a user.tsx, user.tsx, which I can share between all the components. So I can use this tsx file. And inside this tsx file, let's create a context const app context equals create context from React, and let's give undefined, and let's save this. And below we can create a provider function, export default and function, and let's say this provider, and let's create a bracket, and inside this we can create children, and let's give children, and react dot react node, and save it. And let's come here and let's define a constant const name and set name. These properties we can share between all the components. Set name equals let's use this state from React, and let's give initial name of Zach, and let's set this to string, and now let's close this. You can see we have set this element. Now we need to share this element inside other components, like in the app client component. Now in order to do that, first we need to return app context dot provider, like this. You can see we can provide this, and it is giving us an error. So inside this provider we need to specify the value that we can pass, and its name, give a two bracket, and it is name and set name. You can see we have specified the value that we can pass. Now we can specify children, like this, children. Now we can wrap the provider inside any element. So when we wrap this provider inside any element, it is children. We can share these elements inside the children element of this provider. Now let's save it. Now it is giving us an error because we have assigned the context to undefined, but set name is another step. Let's see that. You can see it is dispatch set state action string. So to solve this problem, we need to create an interface. In this part, let's create an interface context value, and let's give a name of string because our name is a string, and let's give a set name of this value. I think it is this value, yeah. Set name this value, Control C, and let's paste here, but we can import this using React dot dispatch and React dot set action. Now it is still private, but now inside this create value we can define the value. So we can wrap this like this, and we can give a context value or undefined. Now you can see we can wrap this element inside any element, and we can pass this name and set name. Now let's wrap this inside our layout element. So go to the layout element, and inside the layout element you can wrap the provider inside this children. So come here and let's create provider, not like this, provider, which we can import from here, and let's cut this and paste this like this, and let's save it. Now we have wrapped all the elements inside this provider element, but it is giving us some error because we are using server component. Use create context inside server component, so we need to convert this to use client. like this. Now I think it is not giving us an error. Yeah, so now we can pass all the elements inside these elements. Now let's create a client. Let's pass to the client element. We need to pass the name and set name inside this client element. So in order to pass it, let's go here inside below the joke. Let's define another element and let's pass name and set name equals use context of app context. I think it is not like this. Yeah, instead of doing this, we need to pass this inside a custom hook, because it is error prone. It will give us some error when we pass to another element. Even though if I can use, let's say if I have logo element, and inside this logo element if I use context, it will not throw error because we don't properly handle the error. So in order to solve this, we need to create a custom hook, and we need to wrap custom hook inside this element. So let's create a custom hook inside user26. So inside this user26 we can create a function, export function, which is you can create a separate function, a separate folder for this, but for now I will not do that. So I will create a function and use app context, and inside this function we can define const context equals use context, use context from React, and inside this use context you can pass app context like this. Now we can check if the context is accessed outside of our provider or not. So in order to check that, if context equals undefined, we can throw an error. Now if we try to access our provider outside of our context, outside of the provider, it will throw an error which says, let's throw error, throw new error, and let's say use context is not found. Otherwise we will return the context. Now you can see we can use app context hook inside the page element instead of using use context like this, like the previous one. We can use app context directly inside our component. So inside this page element we can come here, const, let's define name and set name equals use app context from app.user. I think it is like this. You can see we can now pass name and set name to this component. Now inside this let's render h1 and let's give a name to this. and let's create a button, and inside this button let's render set name. Let's set it to set name, and let's create on click element, and inside this on click element we can render a function which with set name equals update Zach, and save it. Now let's come here and let's check it. Let's go to client. You can see it will render the Zach, but now if I click this it will render updated Zach, so it is working fine. You can see first we define our context, we wrap our context with a custom hook, and we can share this custom hook inside all the components using a provider. If we try to access a provider outside, if we try to access a context outside of the provider, like if you try to access with login component, and inside this login component if we try to access the provider or the context element, we'll throw an error, user context not found. Now we have handled the error. Now inside these children we can access the provider like this. We can destructure the name and set name, and we can access the custom hook, and we can use all the elements inside the custom context. So now you can see it is easier to share data between central component to other components. So this is how you use context element inside Next.js. So let's go to the next section. Now other option to context APIs using external library. One of the best external library we can use is Zustand. So first let's install Zustand for now. Npm install Zustand. It will install Zustand. Now we can use Zustand to share between to share state between components. It is lightweight library, and it is very fast to render. So now let's see, I have already installed it. Now let's see how we can create the stand context. First let's close this, and inside this Next.js app let's create a store. Inside this store we can create user.ts, not tsx. Now we can create our user store. First export const, let's create our user store equals create, which is from the stand, and let's create a store set. You can create a function, and inside the function it is an object. Now inside this function we can set a state and a function. So now first let's create a state, user state, which is name Zach, and age let's say 20, and save it. Now you can add more states in the user. Also we can create more states, like more data states, so like geography geo, and you can create more data. This is the state of the function. This is the state of the store. Initially you can store, you can create multiple state objects like this, but now for now I can create only one, and the other is in order to change these states we can create a function to change this state. So let's create first update name input, updated name input. This is a function to pass two components, or you can change this state inside this function. Let's show you that. Let's say new name string, and inside this string let's create a function and let's say set state, and not like this, like this. I think it is giving me some error. This expression is not callable. We have made some mistake, I think. Yeah, it's not a function, it's like this, you can see. Yeah, so now we have defined the state, and now we can change the user from this function. Let's change that user, and we can use these three dot operators to take all the elements inside the user element. So state dot user. Now we have copied all the elements from the user. Next we can specify the type that we want to change. For now let's change the name to new username. Now if you call this inside the component and assign any name, it will change this name to that name. So let's assign that name and a new name. I think it is giving me some error. Let's give this any. Now you can see we can update a function. You can also fetch, you can use async function inside this store, but now I don't do that. I will show you only the sync part, and you can use also async part in other time. So let's create another function, update name. Let's create that. Let's comma this and update name, updated name, which is new name string, and let's give a function again, and let's set state of like this, and let's assign user again, and dot state dot user, and let's give a name user. I think it is giving me some error. User set, not user, it is new name. Now we can use this function and this state inside all components. I'll show you that, but before that let's specify an interface for this. Two interfaces. First for the user, interface user, and the name string, and h also string. And let's save this, and let's assign another interface for the functions. Interface user store, user, which is user, updated name input, which is new name, string, and let's return void, and the other is update name, which is user, string, and let's return void again. Now we have defined our interface. Let's change this to new user, and this is new user again. And let's give this to any, and let's save this. You can see we have defined our schemas. Now we can share all these functions in all these states. So now let's create a new folder which is called client1, and let's go to client1, and let's create a new file, page.tsx, and export default client1, and let's create our function. We can import all the function from the store. So to import our function, let's create const, let's give it as use equals user store, which is state any, and let's give function, and let's select state.user. Now we have selected all the user state, which is name and age. First we need to import user store from store like this, and the other is let's also import the update name, update name, let's say update name user store, and let's give a state any, and let's select state dot updater name input. Like this. You can select it like this. I think it is giving me some error. We need to give a function like this. Now the error go away, and now we can select again the updated name one. Let's give it const update name one equals user store state, which is any again, and state dot updated name input, not input, update name, and save it. Now we can use all this function and all the constants inside this element. Now let's create a function inside this which is called update. Inside this we can render any, and let's render update name. When we update the name, let's change dot target dot value. Now when we use this function inside the an input, it will change the update name to this input value, and the other is, let's create another function, update one, and let's give a function update name one, update name one, and inside this let's render this is the updated Zach, and let's save this. Now we have created these two functions. Now we can return them, we can render them, return, and let's give a div. Inside this div let's render the name. So we can render the name using we have selected all the user. From the user we can render us dot name, and below this we can render again div us dot h, and let's save this again. Also the other is, we can first let's show you the result of this. When we go to client one, it must render that. So let's go to client one, it will give us an error because we are trying to render user store inside server component, so we can specify this as use client, and save this, and let's go here. Now it will render all the elements. As you can see, it will render Zach and 20, which is found on the store. You can see we have rendered this. You can also create many states like user. You can also create data, and we can create other like this, and you can create, you get the point. You can create many state and many functions, both async and sync functions. We can fetch data from this store. Now you can save this. You can see we have successfully transported this element is inside this. So now let's check the functions. Let's create an input because we have used target dot value. So let's create an input, and inside this input let's create on change, and let's keep update. Now when we update this, it will set the updated name to target dot value, because we have specified this. Update name input will be new name. New name will be specified on the component. On the when we change this, the name will be changed. Initially it was Zach. Now when we change the input, the name will be the new name. So now when we come here and save this, and let's come here, and let's come here to the input. When I change this, you can see the input will be the new name. But if I refresh this, the initial state will be the state of this element, the user element. But when we update this, it will be the target dot value. So now This also works. Now let's check the updated one. Let's create a button, and inside this button, update name, let's say update name, and on click, let's render update one, and let's save this. Now when I come to here, and when I update the name, you can see this will be the updated name, because I have set this to, this is the updated name. So inside this, the updated name, I use new username, and it will set the user to new username. First it will copy all the state, and it will change only the name, and it will set the new username. The new username will be assigned when in our components. You can see we have assigned the updated one to this name, and we have passed using on click, and it will change the state. When I refresh this, it will render the initial state. When I update this, it will change the name. So this is how you pass and share the data between components using the store. It is easier way to pass data between central element and elements. You can use in a larger application. It is very scalable. It is good performance than the normal context API, I think. So I will recommend you to use this library to manage your state, manage your state of your application. So this is how you use the stand. I'll see you on the next part. Now, so far we have seen how to revalidate any path using next revalidate like this, or cache no store. Let's show you that. Next revalidate. I've shown you this before, and let's save this. Now it will revalidate after 5 seconds, but now our problem is, what if we want to revalidate a path when we click a button or something, when we do an action? What if we want to this path to revalidate? In that case we use Next.js server action revalidation. So in order to implement that, first we need to give this fetch a tag. Now let's give that. Inside this I can specify also tags, and I can give any name what I want. For now let's give a collection and save it. Now when I trigger these tags, when I revalidate and trigger these tags, this fetch request will be revalidated. By default it will be revalidated for 5 seconds, but if I delay this, it will not revalidate. It will be cached forever. But if I give this revalidate 5 seconds, every 5 seconds it will be revalidated. But now if I click on some button which triggers this tag, it will be revalidated. So let's implement that. So in order to implement that, let's create another function which triggers this collection tag, async, and the function, and let's give revalidate. The name will be revalidate, or wherever you want. For my case I will give this revalidate, the name of the function, and make sure to use server, otherwise it doesn't work. So use server inside the function, always use server. Use this tag, use server inside the function, otherwise it will throw an error. So below that we can call revalidate tag, which is next catch, and inside this we can specify the name of the tag, which is collection, and let's save this. Now when I call this function, it will revalidate this tag, and this tag will fetch will fetch the data from these fetch elements. So let's create that button, and let's give revalidate, and on click let's give revalidate, and let's save this. Now when we click this button, it will trigger this function, and this function which will re-render this fetch function. So let's check that. Server, let's go to server, and when I click this, it will not do anything because I didn't specify any action. I have created a button, but it doesn't work in this way in server components. So I will delete this. Let's add a button again, and let's say revalidate, but this time I will say this to type submit, and let's cut this, Ctrl X, and let's paste this, and above this let's create a form element, and inside this form element let's cut these elements, and let's paste this, and you can specify an action. This is a server action property, so always you can specify action, and inside this action we can call a function revalidate, and let's save this. Now it will work. Let's go here, and if I click this, now you can see it will revalidate. Otherwise it will revalidate every 5 seconds, but if I click this, it will revalidate immediately. Now if I delete this, and if I use like this text will never revalidate. It will be cached forever. You can see for the first time it will revalidate again, but now it will be cached forever because we did not call any revalidate timer for this. We only revalidate when we click this. You can see when we click this it will revalidate, but if I refresh the page so many times, multiple times, it will not revalidate because it is cached forever. In order to revalidate with timer, you can use revalidate, and we can give a timer like this. It is like this, and save this. Now it will revalidate every 5 seconds, and also we can revalidate with this button. So this is how you use server action with a revalidate tag. I think this is a brief overview of server actions. So I'll see you on the next section. Now let's deploy our project to vercel. So first, in order to do that, we need to create a GitHub repository. So let's click new, and let's create a new repository. Let's say it's next.js deploy, I think like this, and let's copy this and paste this. Let's create a new repository. Initialize our git by Ctrl+C, and let's come here and paste this. First we need to delete this. Now we need to initialize it again. Now we have initialized successfully, and let's add using git add dot git commit m first commit, and after this we need to create a branch, and we need to push it to this origin. We need to add this origin, and we can push it here. Now it will push our code to GitHub. Let's wait a little bit. Now it has pushed our repo to GitHub. Let's refresh this. You can see it has pushed successfully. Now we can go to vercel and add new project, and we can import any file. Now I have imported this. Root directory will be this, and I don't touch anything. And let's create deploy. Now it is deploying. Let's wait a little bit. You can see it is deploying all the elements. I'm gonna pause this, and I'm going to return. You can see now I have deployed my app successfully. Now we can go to the app. You can see I can go here, and you can see I've successfully deployed it. So this is how you deploy to vercel. It is very simple. You will push your code to GitHub, and you can go to vercel, and you can deploy directly by importing your GitHub to vercel. So it is very simple step. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next tutorial. We have finished the Next.js project. I'll see you in the future projects. Thank you.